Hey, Bastich B here for 64K and welcome to vlog number 42, July 2023. So on today's episode, I'm going to talk about some of the channel updates, some of the stuff I'm working on right now, and also more importantly, we're going to get to your Q&A. I posted a question if anybody wanted to ask questions of this actual channel on all my social media, so we're going to go through that. Everybody that submitted a question, it'll be answered in this vlog. And let's start with the channel updates here, and the biggest one obviously being the channel went over 15,000 subscribers, which is pretty damn awesome. Never thought I'd see it get that big. It's still relatively small in terms of YouTube channels though, but it's still pretty damn cool. I'm very grateful. I've looked at the stats. Still to this day, 72% of people that watch this channel on a regular basis, that means almost every week, are not subscribed. 72%. That to me is insane. People always post in the comments that this channel should be a lot bigger than it is. There's nothing I can do about it. You just have to subscribe. You have to hit that subscribe button. Please, if you enjoy this channel on any level, please just take the time just to subscribe. It only takes like a few seconds. This channel should probably be 2 to 3 times larger than what it is right now, just in terms of viewers that are regular viewers. But yeah, 72%, that's insane. I know a lot of channels have this issue. I've talked to other people, so it's like a common thing. So anyway, so if you can, please subscribe. It'll be greatly appreciated, trust me. So over the last month, I've been releasing a lot of smaller videos, nothing too big, 5 to 10 minute videos at the most. The reason I've been doing that is because I'm working on a massive video on the side that's taking like, I would say 80% of my time. And, people don't seem to understand this. A lot of people, I guess it's just the impression you get from YouTube, or maybe it's just a lot of new subscribers. I don't really know, but people seem to think this is my real job. This is what I do. This is all I do. Some people complain that the videos are too short and, I'm not giving enough content. I put out 2 videos a week. This isn't even my real job. So, to do that is crazy already. And to make any video that gets made here is like a miracle. I don't even know how it all comes together. But just bear that in mind. This is not my real job. If this was my real job, you'll be getting way more elaborate videos on a much more regular basis, even though this channel is extremely regular. There's 2 videos a week. I mean, that's crazy already. I'm the only one making this. I got no help from nobody. So just bear these things in mind. The small videos keep the channel going and keep it regular in motion. I wouldn't put out any video I'm not proud of. If I basically make these videos for myself, if I'm satisfied with it, and then I put it out. I don't really think length is really any sort of matter. I could talk about a game, for example, for 45 minutes. I could stretch this video out, but I prefer to compress it into like maybe 5 or 6 minutes, and then I can put all that information in that video and it could be just as effective. I don't believe there's a lot of YouTube channels that stretch out the reviews of games that just go on forever and it puts you into a coma. I'm not going to waste your time. If I can say something in 5 minutes as opposed to 50 minutes, I'm going to do it. So that's just the way I make videos. If you don't like it, that's okay. I don't really care. But the reason I'm talking about this is I'm busy working on a massive video. It's a 35th anniversary Mega Drive special. It's basically, if you've seen my arcade video, the 10-hour one, that's basically what this is, but for the Mega Drive / Genesis. It's the 35th anniversary coming up in October, at least of the Japanese release. The US release was a year later, and the European was another year later. But I'm focusing on the Japanese release, the original release, right? I am trying my damnedest to get this video done by October when that happens. Whether that is realistic or not, I don't know yet. If it doesn't come out in October, it'll probably be out by December, so it'll still be within the year when it was released. That's the whole goal here. And yeah, it's taken up like 90% of my time and 90% of my free time. That's not even like, let's not even count normal life and work. So just bear that in mind when you see videos here. I'm going as fast as I can. So what this means is in August, there's not going to be any videos coming out. Dedicating that 100% to just focusing on that video and seeing how much headway I can get. I'm working on it now like crazy. I've got all the videos, 90% of the videos done for July here, so there's no disruptions here. I just got one or two to finish off. So everything will be business as usual this month, but next month there'll be nothing. I'll be working on that. At the end of the month, I'll probably start making some small videos for September. So just bear that in mind. I am working ahead on something pretty epic and cool. Whether you're interested in the Mega Drive or Genesis or not, you will probably love this video. I can guarantee that. It's if you like the arcade one, I'm just being, putting all my passion. It's a system that I absolutely love. Besides the Commodore 64, the Mega Drive and the Sega Saturn are my favorite systems, so they are just as important to me as the C64 and just as nostalgic, really. So I can't wait for this to come out. I've got a lot more to do. I'm about 1/3 of the way through it, roughly. So I've chopped away a massive chunk of it, but considering it's going to be like who knows how many hours long at this point, I got a long way to go. So I hope you'll look forward to that. And now with all that out of the way, let's head over to my computer and we'll start going through the questions. Okay, so I'm at my computer station here. This is where I do all my editing, and we're going to go through the questions. I'll try and answer them the best I can and try and be brief without going too dramatic here. And the first two questions are from Patreon, and the first one up is from TD Bauer, and he asks, I'm super excited that you got 15k, way overdue. Thank you very much. And his question is there one new game for the C64 in the past year that you really put more time into messing around with than any other? And it really warms my retro heart to see so many new C64 games being released and published for the system. The game that I would have to say, like over this year anyway, is definitely Pig Quest. I put probably more time into that game than any other new release. Leicester was also really, really good. But Pig Quest is probably the one I put the most into, simply because it has elements that I really, really love. It's like an action platformer, but it's got a lot of like puzzle elements and things that make it a little bit like an adventure game. It's something I really, really enjoy. So those elements really like made it a lot more enjoyable for me. That's just the type of game I like. So yeah, I would say Pig Quest was probably my favorite. It has been my favorite of this year's C64 releases, and there's a lot of other ones coming out this year that I know about. Not sure when they're coming out, but you have a lot more good games to look forward to. The top 10 for the end of this year is going to be really difficult to put together, because there's already more than 10 really fantastic games that I would consider on that list, so it's going to be interesting. And the next question is from Bill Evans. He asks, hey Bastich, just wondering if there's any C64 game in particular from the 80s or early 90s that you just keep returning to again and again. Not necessarily a massive hit at the time, but just a game that you love for the repeat replayability. So there's definitely a couple games here I could say that I always eventually end up coming back to and messing around with on some level. They're just very satisfying. Gameplay is very simple, but sometimes that is the best thing. The two games that I always come back to are Bruce Lee by Datasoft and High Noon by Ocean. Very simple games. I think both of them came out in 1985. Nothing fancy. Graphics are very simple but do the job very well. Playability is just great. Bruce Lee is very simple. just punch and a kick, run around, grab stuff, jump. That's it. And High Noon is even more simple. Just shoot everything and try and dodge and hope you survive. So those two games are classic games. They weren't like huge. I don't know whether they were massive hits back in the day. There's no real like data that I know of where you can see how much a game sold, especially those ones. I know a lot of people played those games and love them. Bruce Lee is obviously a classic. It's become a classic. And High Noon is very well loved, but I don't know whether they were massive hits or not. No idea. All I can say is that everybody I know that had a Commodore 64 played those games, and there's a reason for that, because they're just addictive. And next we got 3 questions from YouTube. So let's start with Sam Taylor's. He asked, ever thought about doing a top peripherals for the C64? Me and my mates had lots of great arguments about what joystick was best. And as a school kid in the 80s, a dot matrix printer was a must-have. Yeah, I remember that. I can still hear the sound of my Star LC10 used to make grinding its way through an EasyScript document. That sound of that dot matrix printer that we had also, it's ingrained in my mind as well. We used to print stuff out all the time. It's like zzz, so ever thought about doing a top peripherals? I've never thought about doing one, to be honest. It's not really my realm of videos I make. It is interesting though. I think I probably would make one if I had a lot of peripherals to physically show you, but I don't, because I don't really collect them. I've got like a keyboard for the C64. I've got lots of variations of joysticks. I've got a few other little peripherals, but I don't go out of my way to collect peripherals per se. So in order to make a video like that, I feel you would have to actually physically have them, as opposed to just showing pictures. I think that would be pointless in a video form. So it's an interesting idea. If I had an old printer, which I don't, and maybe some other stuff, it would be a cool idea to do, but I don't, so I can't really do that. But yeah, I could do one on joysticks, but I don't know how interesting that would really be, just doing a whole video on joysticks. And the next question is from Denny Haynes. He asked, do you have any plans to do a text adventure documentary? I know you started one a long time ago, then shelved it. Just wondering if you had any ideas to go back to it. I'm looking at high-profile companies like Scott Adams, Adventure International, Level 9, Melbourne House, Magnetic Scrolls, etc. I'd love to see a video in your style. Congratulations on hitting 15,000 subscribers. All the best. Thanks for the question, Danny. As far as plans to make an text adventure documentary, I just don't know. It's a subject I've been asked quite a few times before, and I've answered it the best I could. And I want to make a kind of video about that. I would have to do text graphic adventure games, with text games with graphics, as opposed to just plain text games. I just don't see how I could make a video that would be exciting with just text adventure games. It'll be very difficult. I'd have to show very little of the game and talk more about the company, because it'll be very boring just to watch text on the screen. It's a hard subject to really tackle. Also, the fact that playing these games now would require an insane amount of my time to try and show some sort of gameplay in some sort of video way. It's just hard. It's a hard genre to really tackle. I do have lots of ideas. The company that you mentioned, a lot of companies, the company that I would actually be interested in doing a video on would obviously be, for me anyway, would be Magnetic Scrolls, just because their games had a massive graphical element to them. Doing ones on, say, like Infocom games would be insanely difficult. I don't know if I could do that justice in any sort of way. I did start an adventure. I did start like an adventure kind of a graphic text adventure series. I edited like a lot of one, and I kind of abandoned it because I don't know. I just didn't feel like anybody would be interested in watching it. I have no desire to go back and finish that. It's been too long. The video, if I'll probably watch it now, it'll probably be cringy because, you know, I'm progressing and editing and progressing and hosting and that kind of thing. So when I look back at videos, even like from a year previously, it feels a little bit, you know, a little bit funky to me anyway. But so no, I have no desire to go back to that. I would like to though make a video on this. I just don't know whether that's when that's actually ever going to happen. I'll just be honest. I just don't know. We'll just have to see what happens. And the last question from YouTube comes from Flashback Gamer, and it says, what is it that keeps your undying passion for the C64 after all these years burning so brightly? Have you ever attempted to write music, do graphics on the C64? If you could pick any game that didn't come out on the C64, what game conversion would it be? Okay, so we've got a whole bunch here. What keeps the passion going is just nostalgia, and more importantly, the fact that way too many of these C64 games don't have proper representation in video form. I feel there's so many that have just fallen by the wayside. That's why I want to highlight them as best I really can. Obviously people have done videos on most games, but there's a lot that haven't really had any real exposure. And even ones that have, there's a lot of garbage videos out there. So you know, I just want to you know, pay my respects basically to the games that brought me so much joy, and put out as best little videos I can on these things, and you know, give some sort of legacy, some sort of payback to the games that brought me so much fun. So that's what keeps me going. Have you ever attempted to write music or graphics on the C64? Music, no. Graphics, I did try to make my own game back in the day. I used Gary Kitchener's Game Maker. I think it was released by Activision. I was attempting to make a game that ties into your second question, which is insane. It would never have worked. I was just making it anyway, regardless of whether it was logical, whether I could actually accomplish it with that program. Obviously it would not have been possible. It just couldn't do what you needed to do. So no, I haven't really. That's not really my thing. I did mess around with it on that program, but that's all really. Shoot 'em up construction kit I played around with, and that's good for fun, just messing around with it. It's not good for actually making a real game, let's be honest. If you could pick any game that didn't come out for the C64, what conversion would it be? So this ties into the game I was trying to make. I feel like Sierra kind of dropped the ball and I really wanted them to convert their first 3 Quest games to the C64. They could have done it back in the day. I remember reading an interview where they said it was impossible to put on the C64. It's total and utter garbage. I just don't think they had skilled enough programmers at the time on the C64 to do that. The games that I would love to have seen was King's Quest, Space Quest, and Police Quest. I just love those games. I played those games at my cousin's house, and it's kind of ties into games that I like. I kind of, you know, a little bit off the beaten path, at least at that time. A little bit more adventure-y, you know, not just shooting things. You know, required a little bit of brain power and puzzles and just, you know, like cool situations. I think they could have converted those games to the C64. I think they can still convert those games to the C64. I don't believe they're impossible to do. I think it's ridiculous. I mean, if you just look at Lucasfilm's Zack McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders, it's not exactly King's Quest. It's point and click more than typing and walking around kind of thing. It's basically the same concept, screen flipping and all that kind of stuff, and that game is massive, and the Quest games aren't even as big as that, so you definitely could have converted those games. I wish somebody would give it a go, maybe just give it a little bit more of a C64 twist in terms of graphics. I think it'll be amazing. I'd love to see that. And let's jump on over to Twitter for another question. This one is from Brian Thomas. He says he's got a question. I've watched a lot of your DOS Days videos, and I want to hear more about your experience playing on DOS and the ups and downs. So DOS is such a weird thing, such a weird program to really get into. I was lucky because I grew up in the time when that was the operating system, so I got to know it. You just had to run a computer. So playing those games back in the day, DOS, there's so many variations to use that program. So playing games even back then was always like a little bit of a battle. You had to fight to get the game to work, and when it actually popped up, you were just like elated. It's just because there were so many variations on sound cards and just variations on graphics, different things you could use, VGA, EGA, etc., etc. So DOS was always like, it's a bit of a minefield to go through, but once you learn the basic commands and the basic structure of it, it's not that difficult. You do have to learn those though. The prompts, I think if you're getting into it now, you should just look for a list of prompts. I actually did a video a few years ago about how to use DOS just in its basic form. You can check that out. And that just gives you a real basic rundown of just to get a game going if you're just using it straight up. So yeah, DOS was fun. It's a crazy program. I think if you're gonna get into DOS now, the easiest way to do it is not actually using DOS directly, is downloading games off GOG, good old games, because they are basically, they've customized it to load up DOS instantly, and it instantly goes into the game. You don't have to deal with anything. You basically just select the graphics and stuff like that, and you on your way. You don't have to deal with all the nitty-gritty of DOS. So if you just want to get into DOS gaming very quickly, I would definitely suggest checking out GOG. They got so many classic games, it's insane. And if you want to use DOS as just the program, check out my video, or definitely just check out the basic prompts. There should be some sort of list somewhere that gives you just how to bring up directories and what file you should be looking for to load. You'll be able to get games running up pretty quickly and easily. Whether they work 100% is questionable, because there's a lot of variations. You just got to tinker. If you're not into tinkering a little bit and having a little bit of patience, then DOS gaming is not for you. But if you want to get the quick experience of DOS gaming and actually enjoy the games, definitely check out GOG. And now on over to Facebook. I got 4 questions here. A lot of them are multi-parters, so I'll try to be as quick as possible. The first one up is from Jason Ingram. He says, I'm always interested to hear about the C64 scene in South Africa, but also pop culture in general, toys, toy shops, computer shops. Also, growing up in South Africa, was there a significant alternative to the C64, like the Spectrum? And if there was, can you tell us about it? Also, what ended up replacing your C64? For me, it was an Amiga. Finally, maybe an updated quick tour of your collection room would be pretty cool. Okay, that's a lot of questions there. Let's try to go through these really quickly. So pop culture and toys and that. Yeah, so toy shops and computer shops and that, I think they were pretty much the same as most software shops in the UK or through the rest of the world. Toy shops, I had all the stuff that you guys probably had. Computer shops, there were obviously way less of them. They weren't as prevalent, but the ones that there were stocked really well. They had good supply of stuff. A lot of our games in South Africa came from Europe, so I grew up predominantly on the European gaming scene. But also because we lived right in the middle of the world, we got stuff from other sides of the world. So In the early 90s, I got massive exposure to Japanese gaming, and which was a lot different than a lot of other people's experiences. So a mixture of European and Japanese gaming was what I really grew up on. So it's a pretty weird mix, but it was really, really cool. And as far as growing up in South Africa, the alternative to a C64, as far as computers go, I'd say the alternative to a C64, at least in South Africa, was just PCs, DOS era PCs. There wasn't another kind of separate kind of specific computer that was very popular. The Spectrum didn't even exist in South Africa. I saw one in my entire life living there, so that's not even a thing. Amstrad didn't really exist either, and the Amiga made a decent foothold though. So that creeped its way in the late '80s, early '90s. So Amiga was popular, but I would just say DOS era PCs. They were everybody had them, like starting in the late '80s. Well, when they became affordable, people had them, and that was definitely the alternative. The C64, I knew a lot of people that had C64s, so somehow they managed to get a foothold in South Africa. So there wasn't really much competition in terms of that sense. And what ended up replacing your C64, what replaced my C64 was a Mega Drive / Genesis. I got that in 1991. And that was getting right near the end of my C64 days anyway. Games were getting less and less coming out. I still played the C64 until about 93. I played it right to the bitter end. It was off to the side. The Mega Drive was the shiny new thing that I was playing, but it still got played. I was still getting pirated discs from Europe. So I played it right to the end, but the Mega Drive, yeah, that replaced it. That was like such a massive jump in technology, like in terms of visual style, that I love that thing. It's one of my favorite systems ever, so that's what replaced it. And finally, maybe a quick update of your games room. So I'll do a very brief one just at the end of this video for you. I'll just do a quick run around. There hasn't been a massive amount of changes, at least I don't really know, because I'm living in this space and I made that video over a year ago and I don't know what's changed. I know a few things in this room that have changed, and I'll just show those. The main room, gaming room, nothing's changed besides picking up a few games, but I'll give you a quick run around right at the end. Next is a question from Audie Sawley, my friend over at Limited Run Games. He said, I'm curious if there's any aspects or parts of South African culture that shaped your gaming interests. A specific genre or setting in games that reflects something you associate with your upbringing and in milieu you grew up in. Wow, that is like a deep, deep question. I've been thinking about this for quite a few days. I don't think I could have ever come up with an answer for you very quickly, but I've been thinking about it, and definitely I think the aspect of South African culture that kind of drew me to a certain specific type of game was I've always been drawn to adventure games, kind of games where you go searching in a place, like a mysterious place that you're kind of discovering, and you have to find pieces of things to make puzzles, to solve situations, and just not knowing what's coming next. That kind of gameplay, adventure kind of gaming. And the reason for that is that as kids we used to go adventuring ourselves, like literally. There was lots of bushes and jungles, I would say they were jungles, in South Africa that you could just go out to and just go and explore. We used to do that all the time. We used to follow the paths going, and then we used to just veer off the path and just go towards something we could see in a distance, kind of like an Assassin's Creed game, and head for that thing, whatever that is, and go and see what it is. We used to go down rivers, and we used to use monkey vines to climb up the sides of cliffs, which is insane. such a bad idea. Don't do that. We did so much crazy stuff. We used to find like abandoned houses in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a forest, and not knowing like where this was and how old it was. And I remember this one specific abandoned place. We found this house. We walked through it. The roof was ripped off it. It was just like a basic structure left, and we got to a part where it had like a basement going down, and we looked down in there. We were going to go down and investigate, but we looked into the basement thing, and it looked kind of weird, like there was something moving down there, and we couldn't like figure out what it was because it was kind of dark, but it was like the forest was like way over this thing, so it was hard to see. And then we like lay down and we looked into this pit, this dark pit, and we figured out what was down there. It was just infested with snakes, like Raiders of the Lost Ark, just snakes everywhere. It was a snake pit. Can you believe that? We found a snake pit. That thing actually exists. So it's just like lots of cool things like that. There was like, sparked our imagination. So whenever there were games out, and still to this day, I love games about adventuring and going into like forbidden places and trying to find treasure, kind of like Indiana Jones kind of deals. So that's the kind of game that draws me to that. That's definitely from my upbringing and childhood. It's like seeped into my brain. And the next question is from Craig Marshall. Did you ever get into hacking in terms of having an action replay or any cartridges that you could dupe games? Or were you the type that just to wait for codes to come out in the mags back in the day? So a bit of a combination of both, really. The codes that came out of the magazines back in the day, I never really used them, to be perfectly honest, because the games that I had original versions of, I never bothered to hack them. I just played them. I played them so much that I ended up completing most of them anyway without cheating. The games that I had on discs and stuff like that, those are all pirated games from Europe, and 99% of them had trainers at the beginning that the hackers had put on the front. So if I wanted like skip levels or whatever I want, it was already built into it. So didn't really have any need for that. But my friend next door had an action replay card, like the one you mentioned. He had the red one. Can't remember what version that was. But anyway, so we messed around with that thing a lot and did all crazy stuff. We'd hack into games and you could see the graphic tile set and mess around with that. We did put in cheats in certain games that we didn't have from magazines just to see what it would do. It worked. It was great. Did you ever dupe games? Yes, we used it to... there were certain games that we just couldn't copy between each other. Like there was something happening. If it was a single loader, we used to load it up straight into memory, and then he used to press the button at the back on top of the cartridge, and it would save it as a single file, and then copy that to a disk. So if it was a kind of a one-loader game, we could actually dupe them like that way, pirate them basically. We also used it to save games, which was super risky because it wasn't 100%. It didn't work 100% of the time. You could press the button on the action replay card and actually basically save the whole game to as a memory and then load it up as that. We did that in certain RPGs, which was damn risky because sometimes it didn't work. But we both had a competition to finish the game Space Rogue. We were both obsessed with it. We were trying to see who could finish it first, and we both set a date. We started playing, and I went to my house and he stayed at his house, and for 2 weeks we both played, and we both finished the game miraculously on the same day, within the same day. And I went over to his house because now we had to prove to each other that we had completed this game, because there's no internet, there's no nothing, so you had to actually finish the game. I'd already watched the ending, so I knew how it ended, and he'd watched the ending, but we didn't want to say to each other, explain the ending, right? Because then we'd give it away, and I didn't know whether he completed it. So, but what he actually did was, as the ending started, he pressed the action replay button at the back, and he saved the ending as a file. So I was like, what, you did that? I said, that's super risky. And he said it worked. So he's watched the ending multiple times now. I was like, cool. I said, okay. In that respect, then I explained the ending that I watched because I didn't have an action replay. And he was like, okay, cool, you did finish the game. And then we loaded up the ending using his action replay. Well, the file that was saved anyway, and we watched the ending again, and it was super cool. So yeah, we used it for that. That was a super weird thing to do, but yeah, that's what we did. And the final question for this video is from John Ebbs. This is pretty interesting, and we'll see. Anyway, Barbarian 2, 96% gold medal, absolute crappiest game ever. I don't necessarily agree with that. It definitely doesn't deserve a 96% though. Operation Thunderbolt, 92% Sizzler. I'm not sure if that's right, but I'll take your word for it. That game is garbage. Impossible Mission 2, 96% gold medal. Second greatest game ever. My backside. I don't think Impossible Mission 2 deserves 96%. I still think it's a good game, but that's way overrated. Anyway, how much influence did game companies have on scoring when giving previews and placing advertisements, etc. in magazines back in the day? Yeah, so this is really interesting. You have to wonder how much influence they did have. I would say they had a lot of influence. So I saw a tweet a few months ago by Julian Rignall where somebody asked him, he was in Zap 64, if you don't know. He worked on computer and video games. He's on Mean Machines. He did a lot of magazines. He was an editor / reviewer, probably the most well-known British classic video game reviewer. Anyway, so somebody asked him whether money was exchanged back in the day for reviews, and he blatantly said no, it never ever happened. I honestly don't believe that. I'm just going to have to take his word for it because I didn't live back in the day. I wasn't at the Zap offices. I wasn't there in the moment, so I can't honestly say 100%. But I don't believe that. Maybe it didn't happen at Zap. Maybe not. Don't think so though. I think it happened. I mean, if somebody's going to be advertising in your magazine, you're probably going to be slightly more lenient towards their game when you review it. That would just make sense to me. So I don't know. I can't really say. It's kind of a bit dodgy how some of these games that are not very good got really high percentages. And if you look in the magazines, the companies were advertising a lot of their games in there. Questionable. So I say there was definitely some sort of influence on different levels. I think it would really just depend on the magazine. There were some sketchy magazines out there. The one that I would say without a shadow of a doubt was paid off, and anybody that says it wasn't is ignorant at best. In the early 90s was the release of that game. You probably all know it, Rise of the Robots. One of the worst games I've ever played. Absolute piece of garbage versus fighting game. I don't know which Amiga magazine it was. I can't think off the top of my head. One of them anyway gave the game a massive 96% or something insane, like absolute craziness. Let's just say that the guy really liked the game, honestly liked the game. Even if he liked the game, giving it a 97%, that's saying it's like one of the best games on the Amiga ever released. Obviously there's no human would actually ever like that game, so it's not possible. I would say that those guys were paid off 100%, and I think that happened a lot in the early 90s, more so than even the 80s, because when console gaming was becoming more popular, I think the magazines were trying to draw people in and overinflate some of the games that were coming out with these massive reviews and get your attention. I think that happened a lot, and when console games overtook computer games in the early 90s, and that kind of in popular culture anyway, I think they were trying to do that. I think Rise of Robots is an example of that. So I would say I'd say there's a lot of dodgy dealings done back then in those magazines. So, when you look back at some of this stuff, you got to think about that and form your own judgment on the game anyway. Some of those Zap reviews you mentioned are way overrated. I agree with you. I don't think, besides Operation Thunderbolt, which is trash, the other games are actually decent, but they definitely don't deserve those kind of ratings. And here's a quick one-shot tour. Not much has changed in this room, all that much. Let me get over here. Over here I've just swapped out my records and laser discs. I got Riding Bean on laserdisc. I got it from a convention. Beetlejuice on laserdisc. Darkman on laserdisc. Lost Ninja 2 soundtracks. Put that there. Some small things have changed over here. Nothing too dramatic. As far as this area goes, most of it's pretty much the same. I've just added a lot more games to the Genesis library and Mega Drive library. I've been focusing on that system. I don't really collect games in general. Just whatever I happen to come across is what it is. And over here in this computer corner, I've added the TRS-80. It's been added to this corner so I can mess around with it. That's why there's two monitors there right now. It's the only real change over there. This area is predominantly exactly the same as it was, at least as far as I remember when I did that video. Over here, the TV's been downgraded slightly. It's now a 48-inch. It used to be a 52. Our TV upstairs died, so I had to do a whole bunch of TV swapping. No big deal. Don't need anything massive down here anyway. It was pointless. Picked up this the other day off Amazon. It was super cheap. I haven't played it yet. Looking forward to it. I think it was only 20 bucks. And over here, there used to be a little retro mini console set up all over here. Changed it out. I needed more space for VHS. I've been finding cool ones at my local thrift store, so I just changed it out. I didn't really even play those anyway, to be perfectly honest. I got enough console set up in the other room to play. This is all basically the same. Lots of games have been added here as well to the PS2 and Xbox and stuff like that. Just stuff I've been finding in thrift stores, nothing like rare or anything. Nintendo section is exactly the same as it was. I don't think there's any difference whatsoever. This is my least played systems of all time, Nintendo related stuff. I respect Nintendo and for their quality, but they're definitely not in my top tier of stuff I'll generally play. I just like messing around with them. And anyway, that's all still the same. This room has changed quite a bit in certain aspects. Let's get in here. The book area and all that, that's pretty much the same. I've swapped out all the games that are on display here. They're all different now. All around the room. All over the place. Every single game was swapped out. Did that a while ago. So, and you're probably wondering what this hideous kind of statue is. Let me just show you. I have to have it on display here. I can't not, because my daughter went to my parents' place and slept over there the night, and in the morning she was coming back. They were going to bring her back to us, and she saw this in the lobby of their apartment complex. Somebody was just giving it away because it was garbage. And she ran over it, she picked it up, she says, and when she got home, she says, "Yeah, Dad, I found the golden idol for you, just like Indiana Jones." And yeah, she was associating this with, the idol at the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark, so that really, really melted my heart. It's super, super nice. I can't not have this on display now, even though it's hideous. Anyway, that's part of the room. Just pretend it's the fertility idol from Raiders of the Lost Ark and we'll all be good. And so cables, I know cables. I hate cables. I need to do something about that. I got that Castle Grayskull up there now. That's pretty cool. This area's changed. There used to only be one monitor here. I got two now. All the consoles are different here.
Got the original Xbox set up here, and Dreamcast, those on that monitor. And then I've got the Saturn hooked up here. This has got super VGA connector, and then this is the PC Engine I picked up a couple months ago. So I got that there, so that's pretty cool. Over here, there's a little bit of changes. The GameCube is here now, and I've finally got a working 360 again, which I'm very happy with. Been playing a bunch of those games now. I've got a video coming out very soon on some of my favorite shoot 'em ups on the 360, so look out for that. It's pretty cool. This is all basically the same. That tape deck was switched out. This is the one I found at a thrift store. It's like a real tape deck. I used to have a fake, like a modern one that looked like an 80s one, but this is better. This is actually an old one. And this is literally the video you're watching. I'm editing. And I forgot to film this part. I just finished doing that part, and I was like, oh yeah, I gotta do the tour, so I better do that quickly. Like I said, all the games have been switched out here, so it's lots of different stuff to look at, just for my own sanity. And so this table is completely different than it was in the original tour. There was just one monitor, and these have all been swapped out. These are all CRTs, obviously. I've got my C64, my real C64 set up on this one. That's the Maxi I just used to capture game footage, so that's all that's for. But this is a real C64. Got a 3DO. Over here has a Master System. I picked this up, I think, at the beginning of the year. So this is also a new addition as far as consoles go. I'm very happy with this. I still need to get a proper controller. I hate these controllers. It's just super weird. Anyway, what do I have in there? Outrun, awesome. And another CRT setup here. So it's got my Genesis and Sega CD. I got one of these like flash card kind of things. Got every single game on there. Also, what I got on there is the BIOS for the Sega CD / Mega CD. So if I want to play Japanese and European games, which I have a whole bunch anyway, I just load up the BIOS and it switches it to a Mega CD, and I can just play the real games on here with no problem. So that's pretty awesome. And that's pretty much the main changes here. There's nothing else really. Lots of little games have been added, and I'm sure there's other things that have changed, but to be perfectly honest, I couldn't honestly tell you what else has changed because I did that video such a long time ago.
And that's it. I know it was really long. I hope I was able to at least answer some of your questions and give you a fairly good update of what's happening on the channel. Thanks for joining me, Bastich B, at 64K. I hope you had a good time, and if you can, please like and subscribe. They'll be greatly appreciated, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.